Well, all right. You know, when I was in 6th grade, some kid came up to me and wanted to trade me 5 albums for one album that I had, right? 5 for 1. And the album that I had, I really didn't like it. It was Elton John, Goodbye Yellow Brick Road. I think it might have been a dual album set. And what he wanted to trade me for was his brother's 5 Black Sabbath albums. It was Black Sabbath, Paranoid, Volume 4, Sabbath Bloody Sabbath, and Master Reality. That's right, those 5, right? What Sabbath, what? I'd never heard of them. I made the trade. He got his ass kicked by his brother for trading, and I became a Black Sabbath fan for the rest of my life. Those first 5 albums, I could tell you with all honesty, I could pick any instrument up off the wall here and play those 5 albums top to bottom, no problem. I loved all of that music. The next one after that had Hole in the Sky in it and a couple other songs that I thought were kind of hip. But for me, the first 5 Sabbath albums was the godfathers of heavy metal. You know, Tony Iommi, Bruce Wayne, Tony Iommi and Bruce Wayne and Bill Ward, maybe not Bruce Wayne, Bill Ward, Geezer Butler, and Ozzy Osbourne, lead vocalist. Now, I got to see them for the first time in the late 70s, and they had a young band opening up for them called Van Halen. And it was quite the brutal experience watching a young Van Halen and an Ozzy Osbourne, lead singer for Black Sabbath, who was clearly outmatched by the opening act. Ozzy came out there, he looked like he was confused. He was off key. He was only capable of saying to the audience, "Everybody get up, put your hands in the air, and we love you." It's the same 3 things he said. I saw him years later with the Blizzard of Oz tour, and I saw him with, Diary of a Madman, and I saw the one after that with Jakey Lee, and again, it's the same performance by him, you know. He's out of breath, he's out of time, and he's out of step with it all. Now, the last time I had anything to say about Ozzy, the people on the internet responded with, "You should die, kill yourself, who are you, Ozzy is God, you should die." Again with the die. And I like this one, "You are ruining the internet, stop talking about Ozzy." Somebody even reported me on Facebook that I was bullying Ozzy. You could believe how ridiculous that is, that I'm just an old roadie hanging out talking about whatever, that I am abusing Ozzy Osbourne, the multimillionaire, and the Prince of Darkness, right? Take me in, I don't remember what I have to do. And here's my thing about Ozzy Osbourne. Those first 5 Sabbath albums, man, I think that is heavy metal gold forever. It is the template that people used throughout the 80s, to today. The template of what heavy metal was done by Tony, Geezer, and Bill Ward, and the vocalists they had with them. My understanding is that Geezer Butler wrote all the lyrics for Black Sabbath, or most of them. I don't know, because I wasn't there. But the good news is, we know people that were there through the creative process. And here's my thing. When I saw Ozzy with his band, Blizzard of Oz, I thought the highlight of the show, hands down, was the guitar player, Randy Rhodes. Anybody that saw those 2 tours with Randy, you know, most people will back me up on that the star of the show was Randy Rhodes. You could say that Randy never would have been anything without Ozzy, or this and that, you know. I really don't know if that's true. The guy was remarkable, and he was on his way up with his previous band, Quiet Riot, that we know. But I know this. I know that when I see all songs written by Ozzy Osbourne on the back of an album, I think to myself, really? All songs written by? It just happens to sound like these guitar players that you keep hiring over again. It just happens to sound like that. Like, I've never seen a fucking photo of Ozzy Osbourne ever holding a guitar. Like, really? He's a guitar virtuoso that's masterpiecing all these songs together? Or is he hiring other people and not giving them the credit? Now listen, you want to hire a band and be the front man? Hey, I'm all about that. That's what it works, and that's how it works, and that's fine. But here's the thing that I think that's shitty. You could have tears for your former bandmates, but credit where credit's due, that's another thing, When you're taking responsibility for somebody else's work and stepping up, that's lame. If I hired someone to build my house and then when they're done with it, I pay them for it, as I do, but then I get to stand out in front and say, yeah, I built that all by myself. I mean, come on, it's preposterous, Another thing about Ozzy too is that his performance never got better. It never improved, man. I mean, you look at a video of him from 1981, 2001, 2011, it's never improved, man. The guy has just performance flatlined all the way through. I don't believe he's ever written anything. I don't believe he would ever show up for anything on time. And I believe, my personal opinion, if it wasn't for his wife, we'd be stepping over him on the sidewalk. And that's just what it is, man. The guy's incoherent.
Those don't belong on the bed.
He's not up to the task. And it's just kind of this big charade, this charade of like, why? Oh, we're worshiping Ozzy? Like, for what?
It's Sharon here. Could you just tell her our mum called? Thank you so much. Thank you.
Yes.
Like, what is he? I don't get it. And again, who are you? You suck. You're not Ozzy. You're jealous. I mean, listen, I am not jealous of somebody in my age group that's 100% incoherent, okay? So let's get that out of the way. But let's listen to the people that were there.
To form a band. Sharon Arden had already phoned me from LA and she said, look, Ozzy's out of Sabbath, he's looking to put a band together. Do you know any good guitarists? Because they were looking for a guitarist. And I said, well, not offhand, but I'll ask around, keep my ears and eyes open and let you know if I hear of something. So anyway, this night in Camden, I met Ozzy and we got chatting and he said, look, I want to put a band together, would you be interested? And I said, yep, sure, let's give it a try. So David Arden phoned me from Jet Records in London, and he said, I've got you a train ticket. Will you go up to Ozzy's, meet him, and have a play together, see if it's going to work? I said, yeah, sure. So I went up on the train to Stafford. Ozzy was there to pick me up in his car at the railway station. And I got to his house, and he had a couple of other guys there, a drummer and a guitarist. And I don't know who they were, and I can't remember their names. But, they were nice blokes, and they were decent enough players and pretty good, but I wasn't sort of like knocked out. There was no real spark there. It was okay. It wasn't bad. They were nice guys and good players, but there was no real chemistry, So I went out to the kitchen with Ozzy, and I said, Ozzy, look, if you want to get serious about this, I said, I'd like to form a band with you, but I don't think these two other guys are sort of world class. He said, oh, okay, hang on a minute. And he walked he had a little rehearsal room built integrally on his house. So he went into there where these guys were. He said, oh, you can pack up, fellas, it's not working out, you can go home. And that was it, they were gone on the spot,
We should also plug your book, For Fact's Sake, available, I guess it's on Amazon. You can purchase it. I looked at it in Canada and the U.S.
Amazon Canada, Amazon US, Amazon UK. It's done quite well, and the reviews have been great. I mean, people love it. If you look at the reviews, people just love it. So I'm really pleased about that, and I'm very grateful that they took the time to leave those reviews, because they're really nice reviews, and I appreciate them.
Just quickly, Just so everybody understands, I want the layman to understand this right off the bat. So there are songwriting fees that you get, there are performance fees, there are sync fees. These are the different fees. So the performance fees, when you play on an album, you get paid. Songwriting fees, when you write a song, you get paid, you know, just in theory, like quickly.
Yeah, there's all different types of royalties. For instance, you know, anybody can record, say, a Beatles song or something. You don't get the writing royalties because McCartney and Lennon wrote that song, or George Harrison or whoever wrote, but you get the performance royalties, which is you played on it, it's your song version of that Beatles song, and so you get, if a record sells and it's your performance, you get those record royalties. Sale of the record, the songwriting royalties go to the writers. Every time you buy a CD, or in those days a vinyl record, it was divided up into different types of royalties out of that one sale, you know, so a percentage went to the writers, a percentage went to the performers, a percentage went to the record company, and, you know, like that.
What about sync fees? Explain that.
Synchronization fees are for the usage of the song in, say, a commercial on television or a feature in a movie, you know, that sort of thing, and they're called synchronization fees, or sync fees for short, and they can vary. You know, you can get, like as an example, say, you know, a Honda four-wheel drive SUV used Crazy Train a few years back, and that was, you know, a big fee for the use of that song in their advertisement, and that's divided up between the publishing company and the writers of the song. And in that case was Ozzy, me, and Randy.
So what did your contract stipulate when you first signed with Ozzy Osbourne? Did you have performance, sync, and did you have...
Yeah, we were supposed... You see, an average deal in those days was an act, you know, whether you're a solo artist or a band or whatever, was around 12% of retail. So we were supposed to have 12% for the whole band. Now, because Ozzy had just come out of Black Sabbath and he was already signed to Jet Records as their artist, we decided, and we thought it was fair, that Ozzy gets 6% by himself, and the other 6% was supposed to be split between Randy, Lee Kerslake, and myself. So we were supposed to get 2% each, and Ozzy was to get 6%. And that would change as we went further down the line and became more of a band sort of thing. Because it was a band, it wasn't a solo project, you know. It was a band called the Blizzard of Oz.
Is that what the contract stated? You know, when you were signing the record deal, or sorry, the contract...
Well, that's what happened. We didn't actually end up signing it because things were getting changed. We had our law firm, and they had their law firm, and they wanted to put things in the contract or take things out, and our lawyers were saying, no, you can't have that in there, you shouldn't have this in there, we want to change this, and they were going backwards and forwards, you know, and it was all done quite quickly. You know, the two albums were done within about 10 or 11 months of each other, including a UK tour. So, you know, we wrote the stuff, then we recorded the album. The album was recorded, finished, and out before the contracts were signed. They still weren't signed.
Okay.
And then when it came to write the second album, Diary of a Madman, we said, well, hang on a minute, we haven't had the dough from the first album yet. And Don Arden was in LA, and we spoke to him on the phone, and he said, look, fellas, carry on working, it'll all be sorted out. You know, you'll have your contract, you'll have your money, yada, yada, yada. So we believed that.
Yeah. And
we carried on working and writing, and then we went in and recorded Diary of a Madman. And after Diary of a Madman had been recorded, Lee Kerslake and I got fired. Ozzy wanted Tommy Aldrich in the band, and Tommy Aldrich was a friend of Sharon's as well. And they kept, during the UK tour, they kept pulling me aside saying, let's get rid of Lee, let's get Tommy Aldrich in the band. And I just, it wasn't out of loyalty to Lee, it was just, I just didn't think it was a right move. You know, it was like they were trying to fix something that wasn't broken. And I said, no, the chemistry works really well. We've got a great album behind us. Lee is the perfect drummer for the band, and I think that'd be a bad move. No, I cannot agree to that. You know, I can't agree to something that I think is wrong. And that wasn't, like I say, it wasn't out of loyalty to Lee. It was just that I didn't want to agree to something that I thought was wrong, so I wouldn't. And they asked me several times, and I said no every time. So eventually they got rid of me and Lee. And then about 6 weeks later, this is in 1981, I think it was early April in 81 that Lee and I got fired, and then I think it was like end of May, it could have been the first week in June or something, I got the phone call from Sharon saying, I'd like to meet up with you and discuss doing a third album. So, you know, I had a talk to her, and I was in Uriah Heep by then, because Lee and I had reformed Uriah Heep with Mickey Box and getting that together, and that was going well. But I said, look, I'm in Uriah Heep now, but I'll come and write for the third album and play on it. So we had a sort of an agreement that I would do that, and she said, and I will help you against my father. She had a fallout with her father, and they weren't speaking. And so she said, look, Ozzy and I will help you against Jet Records and Don Arden, her father, to get you royalties for the first two albums. And so, you know, I thought, well, why wouldn't I want to work with them? They're going to help us in our case. So I was to go back and do a third album with Ozzy, Randy, and Tommy Aldrich, and probably Don Airey on keyboards. Because Don was only on the first album. The second album was Johnny Cook. You know, I said to Sharon, okay, well, let's discuss it, let's see what happens, and I left it open. So in 1982, we were supposed to do a third album of the Blizzard of Oz, although they were now calling it the Ozzy Osbourne Band, or just Ozzy Osbourne, and treating it like a solo project, but it wasn't. But anyway, we're supposed to do a third album in 82 with me, Ozzy, Tommy Aldrich, and Randy. But then in March, Randy was tragically killed, and so everything was put on the back burner and put on hold. I ended up doing that third album, but not until 1983, when Jakey Lee came into the band.
A little back to the Blizzard of Oz and Diary of a Madman.
Yeah.
Tell me about your contributions, Randy Rhodes' contributions, and I'm talking about songwriting here, and Ozzy's contributions to the songs, right? I mean, how much did Ozzy, so if you're doing the lyrics, and Randy and Lee are doing the music, we'll say, and Don Airey...
Well, Lee wasn't there for the first album. We were writing the first album while auditioning drummers. And Lee came in at the very end after we had all the material for that first album written. So, you know, we were auditioning drummers, trying them out. Some, you know, were there for a few days. Some lasted a couple of hours. You know, a couple of times we thought, oh, this guy might be good, but he didn't quite work out.
What did Ozzy...
And at that time, we were writing stuff. You know, Randy had riffs and he had ideas, and it was usually Randy and I would sit on a chair opposite each other and work things out together musically. Most of the main riffs were Randy's, but the music part we did together. Now, what we'd do then would be to play a sort of idea of a song, a backing track kind of thing, and Ozzy would sing a melody over it. And a lot of his melodies were very good. You know, Ozzy was, you know, melodic in his vocal tunes, you know, his melodies. And then there weren't any other lyricists in the band. Well, I'd written songs in the past, but I didn't regard myself as, I'll be the lyricist. But we wanted to keep the writing within the band, and Ozzy had never written lyrics. Geezer Butler wrote them in Black Sabbath.
Yeah.
Randy wasn't a lyricist, and neither was Lee, really.
Yeah.
So I said, well, look, I remember we were rehearsing at a place in Wilketshaw, which is in Suffolk, in England. a place called Trans Am Trucking. It was a rehearsal place, and I came down one morning, and Ozzy and Randy had been trying to write lyrics for one of the songs, and it was awful. I just said, oh no. I said, look, I'd better do the lyrics. And so it was sort of like necessity was the mother of invention, because I started doing the lyrics then, and I just wrote lyrics that would fit with Ozzy's phrasing and his melodies, and that's how it all worked, you know. Randy and I put music together. We played the backing tracks for Ozzy to sing over. He sang a melody on them, and then I would take a tape away of his melodies and phrasing and write lyrics to it. So, you know, I tend to be credited for lyrics, but I did a lot of the music with Randy as well.
What about Suicide Solution? Ozzy claiming it was about Bon Scott.
I know, he's dreaming. He knew Bon Scott, but Bon Scott died after I'd written the lyrics for Suicide Solution.
And what was it about?
It was my title, and it was about Ozzy. It was inspired by Ozzy's drinking, because he was drinking himself into oblivion lots of days, you know, and it was affecting him. And I even had to talk to him about it one day, you know, and I said, fucking hell, Ozzy, you know, he was getting drunk during the day. I said, what happens if we find a drummer that we really like and we want him in the band, and he thinks, nah, fuck this, Ozzy's, you know, drunk all the time. I wouldn't want to know, you know, because don't forget, the band was unknown and had just been signed, and Ozzy didn't have the best reputation in the world for being, you know, after being fired from Black Sabbath, of, you know, being professional or reliable. So I had a word to him about it. But Suicide Solution was inspired. It wasn't just about Ozzy, but it was inspired by how Ozzy was with his drinking and that, you know, and and I wrote those lyrics about his drinking, or as a warning to anybody that's drinking themselves, you know, into an early grave. You know, how he's got the audacity to say that he wrote the lyrics about Bon Scott when he didn't write any of the lyrics.
Yes.
They were being sued by that young lad's family.
Yeah.
That killed himself because they said, oh, he had, you know, they had that record on his turntable when they came home, and he'd shot himself. And in those days it was vinyl, and the side that had been playing was the side of that had Suicide Solution on it.
Yeah.
But Suicide Solution wasn't about, you know, advising anybody to kill themselves. It was about advising people against killing themselves with alcohol.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and so Ozzy, I remember I had to talk to their lawyers at the time, because, you know, if I hadn't written the lyrics, they wouldn't have come to me. But their lawyers came to me to get a statement about what the song was about, because I'd written the lyrics. So, you know, I did a statement for them, and that must have been read out in court. And I told them it was you know, it's not advising anybody to kill themselves.
Yeah.
I wrote it as a warning against killing yourself with alcohol, and that's all the song was about.
And what did Jakey Lee have to say about it?
And talk about the writing when you came in with Bark at the Moon. You know, did you bring songs, because you had been in Rat and you had been in other bands, Rough Cut? Did you bring material that you had to those records?
Yes. Yes.
So a lot of the stuff that came in that we heard on Ultimate Sin and Bark was stuff you had been sitting on for a while?
Yeah, yeah. Bark at the Moon in particular, when I wrote it, it was more of that LA feel at the time, you know, like Dawkins, Motley Crue. It was da dam pum pum pam pum pum pam pum pum. Then when I joined Ozzy, I was like, I think I can do something with this. And then I just had the and it turned into an Ozzy song.
Don't do that too long, because we have to pay for that if you do it for more than 4 seconds.
That's right. I was worried about that.
We have no budget. I just want something to clarify something really quickly right there, because something that he said very important. When he wrote it, and I'll leave it at that, Bark at the Moon, when he wrote it. Enough said.
Different in a sense with Ozzy. You know, Randy was a force of nature as a guitar player.
Yeah, he was an amazing player, I have to say. And when I joined the band, you know, it wasn't the normal run-of-the-mill thing for me, because what he was doing was so extraordinary and so, all-encompassing.
How can I put it? The focus, apart from Randy, because the focus obviously went on him relatively quickly, but the focus was always just on Oz, Prince of Darkness, and everything else, and Randy, his genius sidekick. So I mean,
At the
really,
start, the band was called the Blizzard of Oz. It wasn't the Ozzy Osbourne band.
yeah.
And suddenly, I think when it came out, Blizzard of Oz was pretty big, but it got gradually smaller. The more successful the tour became,
Right.
It became Ozzy Osbourne, and that was a big bone of contention, really.
Really?
Yeah, with the band. Yeah.
How did that go? 'Cause-
Well, it ended up. I mean, I wasn't touring with them at that point. I think things got so heated that Bob and Lee.
yeah, they're a great rhythm section.
Great rhythm section, And of course, Bob had a great hand in the songs, and he'd had a great hand in getting Randy by the scruff of the neck and knocking him into shape,
This gets forgotten in the mists of time, doesn't it? Because history is, as always, is rewritten by the victors. And,
Yes.
and
Have you read Sharon's book?
well,
It's rather wonderful, but I kept reading it. No, you didn't.
Yeah.
I mean, she's very much, a music business mogul of the old school.
Yeah, I mean, she is a formidable woman, but why do you think...
Doesn't quite do her justice, actually.
Yeah, right. Does anybody seriously imagine that Ozzy sits down with his guitar and his keyboard and pens?
I mean, the credits were apportioned correctly on the first two albums.
Right.
Except for my contribution, I have to say.
All right.
But no matter. The third album I did, which was Bark at the Moon, he got all the credit.
Any way you look at it, Ozzy has been an icon in the metal business, in the rock business, and you can't deny that. I can't deny that. It's what it is. Those original Sabbath albums, just something amazing. I always said that I'd love to hear Ronnie James Dio singing those original 5, but that's another item. But I'll just say this. Just because the standard is in our industry is shitting on musicians doesn't mean that that should be the continuation of how we do things in the future. There's not enough young people picking up instruments as it is and putting bands together, and this standard of just taking other people's material and claiming it's yours, I'm just not down for it.